"Titi, what have I done to deserve this?" he asked, his voice breaking. The sight of him so broken was almost more than she could bear, but she steeled herself. This confrontation had been a long... My husband's manhood under the coven spell. Titi paced back and forth in her modest living room, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of their home in Enugu, painting the walls with a golden hue. Outside, the bustling sounds of the neighborhood were a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her heart. For years, Titi had been the picture of a devoted wife to her husband, Dammy in Kemdilim. They had met in university, their love story a whirlwind romance that seemed destined for the storybooks. Dammy was charming, intelligent, and ambitious, traits that had initially drawn Titi to him. Together, they had built a life filled with promise and the occasional struggle, like any other couple. But in recent months, a dark cloud had settled over their marriage. Dammy had changed. He had become secretive, distant, and often irritable. Titi's attempts to bridge the growing gap between them were met with hostility and accusations. Whispers of infidelity reached her ears, and she found herself at the crossroads of doubt and despair. Determined to uncover the truth, Titi had taken matters into her own hands. She followed Dammy one evening, her heart pounding in her chest as she trailed him through the winding streets of Enugu. Her worst fears were confirmed when she saw him entering a luxurious hotel with a woman, their bodies entwined in a display of passion that left no room for misinterpretation. That night, Titi's world shattered. The betrayal cut deep, leaving scars that no amount of apologies could heal. She felt a rage like never before, a need for retribution that gnawed at her soul. She would not let Dammy's betrayal go unpunished. He had taken her love for granted, and now she would take something from him. Titi had always been resourceful, a trait that had served her well in both her career and personal life. She spent days researching, poring over articles and books about traditional herbs and remedies. Her mother had been a herbalist, and though Titi had never shown much interest in the practice, she now found herself drawn to it with a fervor born of desperation. She found what she was looking for, a rare plant known for its powerful, albeit dangerous properties. The plant was said to have the ability to affect a man's virility, rendering him impotent if used correctly. It was a drastic measure, but Titi's heart was set on it. Dammy needed to understand the pain of losing something precious. One evening, under the guise of reconciliation, Titi prepared Dammy's favorite meal. She laced his drink with the carefully prepared extract from the plant, her hands steady despite the turmoil within. Dammy, oblivious to her intentions, ate and drank heartily, believing that perhaps their marriage could be salvaged. As the days turned into weeks, Dammy began to notice changes. He was unable to perform in the bedroom, a fact that frustrated and confused him. He visited doctors and specialists, all of whom were baffled by his sudden impotence. Titi watched his frustration with a mix of satisfaction and guilt, her emotions warring within her. Titi had expected some satisfaction from her actions, but she found herself trapped in a web of her own making. She could see the toll it was taking on Dammy, but the path to retribution had been set, and she wasn't sure she could turn back. The once confident and charming man was now a shadow of his former self, desperate and broken. One night, as Titi lay in bed, she heard Dammy crying in the bathroom. The sound pierced her heart, and for a moment she questioned her actions. Had she gone too far? Was there still a way to salvage the wreckage of their lives? Titi knew she needed to confront Dammy, to lay bare her reasons and the depth of her pain. But as she gathered her resolve, a new revelation came to light, one that would twist the story even further. A secret that Dammy had been hiding, something that would change everything she thought she knew about their marriage and the betrayal that had torn them apart. Titi's heart raced as she prepared to face Dammy, the weight of their shared past and uncertain future pressing down on her. What was this secret? And would it lead to their ultimate destruction or a path to redemption? The shadows deepened, and Titi stepped into the unknown, ready to confront the man who had once held her heart. Titi stood outside the bathroom door, her heart pounding in rhythm with Dammy's muffled sobs. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Dammy looked up, his tear-streaked face a portrait of despair and confusion. "Titi, what have I done to deserve this?" he asked, his voice breaking. The sight of him so broken was almost more than she could bear, but she steeled herself. This confrontation had been a long time coming. "Dammy, there's something I need to tell you," Titi began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I know about the affair. I saw you with her." Dammy's eyes widened, and for a moment he seemed about to deny it. But then, as if a dam had broken, he slumped to the floor, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry, Titi. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was weak." "Why, Dammy, why did you betray me?" Titi's voice was a mixture of anger and pain. "I gave you everything and you threw it all away." "I thought you didn't love me anymore," Dammy confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "You were always so distant, so consumed with your work. I felt invisible." Titi was taken aback. She had always prided herself on being a dedicated wife, but had she really been that neglectful? She felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. "That doesn't excuse what you did. You broke our vows, Dammy." "I know," Dammy said, his voice choked with emotion. "I know I can't make it right, but please, Titi, help me. I don't know what's happening to me. The doctors, they can't explain it." Titi felt a surge of guilt and pity. She had done this to him, and now she saw the full extent of the damage. But before she could speak, Dammy continued. "There's something else," he said, his voice trembling. "Something I've been hiding from you." Titi's heart skipped a beat. What more could there be? "What are you talking about?" Dammy took a deep breath, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "The woman you saw me with, she wasn't just a fling, she's my sister." Titi recoiled in shock. "Your sister, what do you mean? You've never mentioned having a sister." "I didn't know either," Dammy explained, his voice heavy with sorrow. "I found out a few months ago. My father had an affair years ago, and she was the result. I only met her recently, and I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid of how you'd react." Titi felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. The betrayal she had felt was suddenly clouded by this new, startling revelation. "Why didn't you tell me, Dammy? We could have faced it together." "I wanted to, but then things between us got worse. I didn't know how to handle it. And when you saw us together, I panicked. I thought you'd never forgive me." Titi's mind raced. This revelation changed everything. The woman she had assumed was Dammy's lover was actually his sister. The guilt she had felt for her drastic actions now seemed even more unbearable. The ground beneath her seemed to give way as the enormity of her mistake crashed down on her. She had let her insecurities destroy the man she loved. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed everything to Dammy, who looked at her with a mixture of pain and disbelief. "I'm so sorry, Dammy," she sobbed. "I thought you were cheating on me. I was so consumed by jealousy that I did something terrible." Dammy's eyes widened with horror as he began to understand. "What did you do, Titi?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I gave you a potion," she admitted, her voice breaking. "It was supposed to make you impotent. I thought it would stop you from being unfaithful, but now I know I was wrong. So wrong." For a moment, Dammy was silent, processing her words. Then he stood up, his face pale and his hands shaking. "You poisoned me," he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. Titi nodded, unable to speak through her tears. She reached out to him, but he stepped back, his eyes filled with hurt and betrayal. "I need some time to think," he said finally, his voice cold. "I can't even look at you right now." He walked out of the room, leaving Titi alone with her guilt and regret. She sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. How could she have been so blind? How could she have let her insecurities drive her to such a terrible act? The hours crawled by in agonizing silence. Titi remained on the floor, her tears eventually drying up but leaving a deep, hollow ache inside her chest. Dammy's words echoed in her mind. When evening came, Dammy had not returned. Titi's anxiety grew with each passing minute. She tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She sent him messages, each more desperate than the last, but there was no response. Finally, late into the night, she heard the front door open. Dammy walked in, his expression weary and distant. He looked at Titi briefly before walking past her, heading straight to the bedroom. Titi followed him, her heart heavy with fear and regret. "Dammy, please," she pleaded, standing in the doorway. "We need to talk." He stopped unpacking his work bag, turning to face her. His eyes were cold, a stark contrast to the warmth she had always known. "There's nothing to talk about right now, Titi. I need time. But I need to explain." "What more is there to explain?" Dammy's voice rose, cutting her off. "You thought I was cheating on you, so you decided to poison me. How do you even justify that?" Titi's knees felt weak, and she leaned against the doorframe for support. "I was scared, Dammy. I let my insecurities get the best of me. I was wrong, and I am so sorry. Please tell me how I can make this right." Dammy's face softened slightly, but his eyes remained guarded. "I don't know, Titi. I don't know if there's anything that can make this right. Right now, I just need space." With that, he turned away, leaving Titi standing there, feeling more alone than ever. Titi stood in the doorway, watching Dammy's back as he continued unpacking his work bag. The silence between them felt like a chasm that couldn't be bridged. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to somehow convey the depth of her remorse, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. "Dammy, please." Her voice broke, barely a whisper. She watched his shoulders tense, but he didn't turn around. The distance between them seemed to grow with each passing second. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Dammy set his bag down and faced her. "I'll sleep on the couch tonight," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I think we both need some time to think." Titi nodded, tears welling up again. "Okay, if that's what you need." She swallowed hard, fighting the urge to beg him to stay. "I'll give you space, Dammy, but please know that I love you and I'm so sorry." He didn't respond, just walked past her and out of the room. Titi sank to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. The emptiness inside her felt overwhelming, suffocating. She had to find a way to make things right, but she didn't know where to start. The next few days were a blur. Dammy kept his distance, coming home late and leaving early. The tension between them was palpable, every interaction strained and awkward. Titi tried to give him the space he needed, but it was killing her inside. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, her mind constantly replaying that awful night and the look of betrayal in Dammy's eyes. One evening, after another day of silence, Titi decided she couldn't take it anymore. She needed to do something, anything to break the cycle. She spent the afternoon cooking Dammy's favorite meal, hoping it might be a small step toward reconciliation. When Dammy finally came home, the smell of jollof rice and grilled chicken filled the apartment. He paused in the doorway looking surprised. Titi stood by the kitchen counter, nervously wringing her hands. "I made dinner," she said, her voice tentative. "I thought maybe we could eat together and talk." Dammy hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, his tone neutral. They sat at the table, the clink of cutlery and the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sounds in the room. Titi watched him take a bite, her heart pounding. When he looked up, their eyes met for the first time in days. "This is good," Dammy said, his voice softer. "Thank you." Titi felt a glimmer of hope. "Dammy, I know I've hurt you deeply. I've been thinking a lot and I want to make things right. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." He set his fork down, taking a deep breath. "Titi, I appreciate the effort, I really do. But this isn't something that can be fixed overnight. Trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken." "I know," she said, tears threatening again. "But I'm willing to work at it if you are. I love you, Dammy, and I'm so sorry for what I did." Dammy reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I love you too, Titi. That's why this hurts so much. But we need to take it one step at a time. We can't just pretend this never happened." Titi nodded, squeezing his hand. "I understand, one step at a time." They finished their meal in relative silence, but the atmosphere felt different, less strained, more hopeful. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. As they cleared the table together, Dammy turned to her. "Maybe we could see a counselor, someone who can help us work through this." Titi's heart lifted. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. It wouldn't be easy, and it would take time, but maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. In the weeks that followed, Titi and Dammy began attending couples counseling. It was a challenging process, each session peeling back layers of pain and mistrust. However, the sessions also allowed them to communicate more openly and honestly than they had in a long time. One evening after a particularly emotional session, Titi sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, the soft glow of the moon filtering in through the window. Her mind was racing, desperately searching for a solution to undo the harm she had caused. She couldn't bear the thought of Dammy suffering any longer because of her foolish mistake. With a newfound determination, Titi rummaged through the cabinets, pulling out every herb and spice she could find. She remembered snippets of conversations with her grandmother, who was known for her extensive knowledge of traditional remedies. Perhaps there was a way to counteract the effects of the potion she had given Dammy. Hours passed as Titi meticulously brewed various concoctions, her hands trembling with anxiety and hope. She mixed herbs, whispered prayers, and poured her heart into every step, willing her efforts to succeed. Finally, as the first light of dawn peeked through the window, Titi held a small vial of liquid in her hands. It glimmered in the early morning light, a faint aura of possibility surrounding it. With a prayer on her lips, Titi made her way to the bedroom where Dammy lay sleeping. She approached him cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. Gently, she lifted his head and carefully administered the potion, praying fervently for its success. Then she waited, her eyes fixed on Dammy's still form, willing him to wake. Minutes stretched into hours, each second feeling like an eternity. Titi's heart sank with every passing moment, the weight of her desperation threatening to crush her. But just as she was about to lose hope, Dammy stirred. His eyelids fluttered open, confusion clouding his gaze. Titi held her breath, waiting for him to speak. Slowly, recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a wave of disbelief. What happened? Dammy's voice was hoarse, his words barely a whisper. Titi's heart soared with relief. The important portion, she said, her voice trembling. But I think I found a way to reverse it. Dammy stared at her, his expression a mix of astonishment and gratitude. How is that possible? Titi explained everything. The potion she had given him, her desperate search for a solution, and the hours she had spent brewing the antidote. Tears welled up in her eyes as she poured out her heart, laying bare the depth of her regret and love. Dammy listened in stunned silence, his eyes never leaving hers. When Titi finished speaking, he reached out and took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I don't know what to say," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I never imagined." Titi shook her head, her own tears flowing freely now. "I'm sorry for my actions," her eyes filled with sincerity. "I let my anger cloud my judgment. I'm just grateful that you're okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't bear to lose you, Dammy. I love you more than anything." Dammy pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you too, Titi," he said, his voice a soft murmur against her hair. "And I promise we'll get through this together." They stayed like that for what felt like an eternity, wrapped in each other's embrace, finding solace in the warmth of their love. It was a new beginning, a chance to heal the wounds of the past and build a future filled with hope and forgiveness. In the days that followed, Titi and Dammy embarked on a journey of healing and reconciliation. They sought guidance from a counselor who helped them navigate the complexities of trust and forgiveness. Together, they confronted their fears and insecurities, learning to communicate openly and honestly with each other. Slowly but surely, the walls between them began to crumble, replaced by a newfound sense of understanding and empathy. They laughed together, cried together, and rediscovered the joy of simply being in each other's presence. As time passed, Titi and Dammy grew stronger as individuals and as a couple. They emerged from the darkness of their past, their love shining brighter than ever before. And though their journey was far from easy, they knew that as long as they had each other, they could overcome any obstacle that came their way. In the end, Titi and Dammy learned that love isn't always perfect. It's messy and complicated, filled with ups and downs, twists and turns. But it's also the most powerful force in the universe, capable of healing even the deepest of wounds. And so, as they stood hand in hand, facing the future together, Titi and Dammy knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would always find strength in each other's love. The story of Titi and Dammy is a powerful reminder of the importance of trust, communication, and resilience in relationships. Secrets and lies can destroy even the strongest bonds, but honesty and openness can heal and strengthen them. It's a lesson in the power of forgiveness and the necessity of facing the past to build a better future. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, share and press the notification button for more interesting and captivating stories. See you in the next story.